The number is out for IIP and it has in fact contracted by 1.9% versus our own estimate of a growth of 1.4%. This is absolutely dismal data. The consensus estimate really was that it will grow between 0.5 percentage point to 1.5 percentage point, and look at that number. It's contracted by nearly 2%, 1.9 to be precise, for the month of February. Everybody expected the uptick to happen, but here this is, it has actually shrunk and not expanded, and that is in fact dismal data that's coming in. We would like to take it across to and the April and Feb IIP is again at a contraction of 0.1 of a percentage point. That number coming in at 0.1%. Manufacturing growth has contracted by a sharp 3.7%. Versus a minor contraction of 0.7 of a percentage point. Okay, let's take it across to Maithili Visnurmat, consulting editor, who joins us live right here in New Delhi. Maithili, good to have you on the show. Plenty of bad news that's coming in on the macro data front. Contrary to all expectations put together, despite the core sector data improving, IIP headline figure has actually contracted by 1.9%.
Yes, Supriya, that really is very disappointing news. One can only hope that given the volatility and frequent revisions that we've seen in IIP, that there might be a revision, because this is really almost unbelievable. Because so far from this fiscal year till January this year, we'd had zero growth in IIP. And one was hoping that the month of February would somehow take it into positive territory. And now what is very clear is that we are most likely going to end the year with IIP actually having contracted. And that is pretty dismal, particularly at a time like this, when we already have so much of political uncertainty hanging over us, as it were, looming ahead. We don't know what we're going to get in for, and now we see that IIP is actually contracted as against everybody's expectations of an increase. But mind you, in today's market sense and ET Now, we did have our expert Upasana Bharadwaj actually predicting a contraction. In fact, she was the outlier, and everybody kind of thought that it would never happen. But it looks like it has happened.
The outlier seems to have got it right. Let's take it across to another expert who's joining us on the show, Saugata Bhattacharya, economist at Axis Bank. What are your thoughts, Saugata? Everybody thought this number is going to expand. We had perhaps put the worst behind us. It was just a very meager, dismal growth of 0.1 of a percentage point in January. But contrary to all expectations, the number has contracted, and this is a sharp contraction, nearly 2%.
Very sharp contraction. But I mean, remember that although we experts like to pretend that we know what we are talking about, it's actually a dartboard throw. Because I mean, I'm waiting to understand where we have gone wrong. We were about 1% plus. So obviously, I mean, the joker in the pack every time is the capital goods sector. So obviously, capital goods would have contracted much more than the minus 7% that we were talking about. But in addition, I'm also quite sure that basic goods would have grown at a much lower rate than even the core sector data of 4.5% seem to suggest. And secondly, because that's a very large part of the IIP basket. And on top of that, I'm sure that even consumer goods, we knew that consumer durables would have done fairly badly, given the data on cars, on other durables that we had seen. But even consumer non-durables, the FMCG type goods, even that would have grown. I'm sure it has grown, but grown at a very, very negligible rate.